Welcome back to Remote Rugby. Today, we are launching something brand new, our interview series. This interview series will consist of interviews with prominent members of the rugby community who will share their valuable past experiences, their insights, and their rugby knowledge. Our first interview today comes from Mr. Mergui, who will share his past experiences of playing overseas in France as well as in BC, the club circuit, and some valuable coaching insights, as well as some advice for some players looking to take their game to the next level. Here it is.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Just hit me with the questions for sure.
Yeah.
I'll try
So
to
I
do
mean,
my
I
best.
think to start us off and kind of give everyone a little sense of who you are and how what your rugby journey has been like, journey has been like. I would love to kind of for you to just talk about like what was your rugby journey? When did you start playing? Kind of how it has evolved over the years.
Yeah, it's funny. So my family, they're all sailors, like competitive sailors. Like my brother races in the America's Cup and things like that. And my stepfather had a shipyard and they build racing sailboats and all stuff. So not coming from a rugby family at all. But my father, he owned a laundromat. Um, and I remember, and it was very close to the Toulon, which is one of the top European rugby team, if not the best rugby team, in my opinion. In Europe, they won a bunch. They had like some amazing rugby players, like Wilkinson, Johnny Wilkinson went through there, and Bakis Botan. Anyway, so some of the best players in the world play there. And when I was a young man, maybe like a teenager, like around 14, my father got a contract to go and wash the jerseys from the rugby team. So we'd go and pick up the jerseys from the change room, like right after the game. We'd pick up the jerseys and I go with him and saw all the players in there, and that kind of stuck with me. But I never thought about playing the game myself. Like when I saw these guys, I was like, "Oh my god, these guys are monsters! Like this is a crazy game, you know. Like the guys are battered, and I remember like the blood on the jerseys and all that stuff because I would be folding the jerseys and stuff, and I was really impressed, but like kind of scared by it. And then when I moved from Toulon to Carqueiranne, which is a small like town, most of the village just outside the city, um, I didn't know anybody there, and I went to the school there to middle school, and the guys, the other guys were like, "Oh, you should play rugby. You know, that's the main sport in the town. Like most of the kids your age, they play rugby." And at the time, I was windsurfing. I was competitive. I was a competitive windsurfer, so you can't be any further from rugby. And yeah, like it's a very rural kind of rugby mentality there, and they invited me to train, and I remember one training session, and I just loved it. It was totally different than what I expected, and I just met so many friends, and I just became part straight away of the team, and then I was pretty good at it. Like I was a good tackler. I just I don't know. I just embraced it right away. The values of rugby we talk about, and yeah, and it was super fun. And we had a really good team. So I started playing around 16, I think. And then I went to high school, and we don't play rugby for school in France. It's all through clubs.
Mm.
So yeah, I stayed with the club, and I just loved it. And we eventually, the club went into some financial problems, so they had to merge with the town next to us, which was the big town where I went to high school, because there was no high school in my village. And it was so fun, yeah. So like we had a lot of success as well with that team. We won one championship in the lower division, but it was super fun. And then I went on to play for university, and at university we did have a team, and that was super fun too. And I played with some really awesome players because we had it was like a pro team next like close by, and they would have their academy players go through the university, and they would have to play one day for the game in the midweek game for the university, and then they played the weekend game for the academy. So simply went to the final of the university French championship, which was huge and super fun. And then I played. Then I finished uni, and I stayed. I did my uni in the Alps, and then I stayed there, and I played for a semi-pro team there in the Federal Three championship, and they were stupid enough to give me a contract. I don't know. I just showed up, and after one, I just because it was the closest club from the house, right? And they were like, after one game I played in the reserve, and back then the reserve was 12 versus 12, so it was like they were experimenting the league. And so I played 8, so with no flankers, so I played 8, so I scored 4 tries in my first game, because you can pick and go from number 8. And
And no
believe
one's
it or not, I
stopping you.
used to be fast. I used to be faster, I know. And yeah, and they were like, okay, you're playing, like, there's the contract, sign here, so you don't go anywhere else. So it was kind of funny to do that. I remember it was 300 euros a month. So I was super stoked. Like, I never thought I'd do that, and I did 2 years with them. And something, they were a really rich club, like really wealthy club. And it was pretty sweet to see how pampered we were. Like, we had like managers and like team dinners and a crazy comfy bus to go on trips and stuff. Like, it was like, wow, to play in such a low division, which is like maybe the 5th division there. It's kind of like the last semi-pro division before full amateur. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, they were a very ambitious town, and yeah, so it was super fun. And I remember working, and everywhere I went in the town, like to the butcher shop or the boulangerie, the bakery, they were like, "Oh, your money is no good. Just take this. You're rugby, like you wear your polo from the team."
That's
Like, so it was
awesome.
really that I felt that town, like atmosphere where the rugby clubs, the men's sport there, and the whole team's behind you, and the whole team is watching the game on the weekend in the stand. So yeah, it was a fun time. I wanted to travel, and I moved to, I applied to work to do an internship in Vancouver to work for the French consulate, and I got it. And I just, same thing, I googled the closest club to where I was staying, and I was staying downtown in the West End, and that's how I got in touch with the Vancouver Rowing Club. And yeah, same thing, I just showed up, and I met this guy Tim Shattuck, who's a bit of a legend in the community, and he just said, "Yeah, just come back on Saturday and bring your boots." And he was so like amateur, like so far from my last experience. It was just like so amateur here. I loved it. Like, the guys were amazing. The level of play was really good. There was like players like Matty James. Remember Matty, like, who played for like
Yeah.
Gent and Wales A and in the Prams team. And so I remember my first game. I was I was supposed to sub for the third team, because they didn't know me, right? I didn't play before. I was supposed to sub for the third team, and they didn't put me in the game. The game was too tight, and they were like, "Oh, we don't know this guy," so they didn't put me in. But I remember I stayed in my get up. I stayed in my rugby clothes, and then the second team game started, and a guy got injured, and they were like, "Oh, we need a guy to go on." I was like, I'll go on," and they're like, okay, whatever, just go on. And then yeah, so that was it. I played for the second team the whole year that year, and it was super fun. And yeah, I've been with the Vancouver Rowing Club for 15, 16 years. Yeah, since 2015, since 2005, since I moved there. And I love these guys. They've been an amazing club. They have the most amazing clubhouse in the world, and it's the best place to go have a pint when it's a sunny day. And yeah, I love I coach there. I still coach. I still help out as much as I can. And yeah, it was amazing. Won a lot of titles with them with the second team, and played a bit of prams as well. So yeah, it was incredible journey here at the rowing club. And I guess I've been on tour. I've been to 2 World Cups with them as well, and we're planning the next one in France. Yeah, they're an amazing club. Amazing club. But I think like the club scene in Vancouver is pretty fun, like the Loners and the Ravens and
Yeah.
Caps. They have pretty strong cultures as well, and it's been fun battling these guys over the years for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like it's an amazing journey.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I coach at Prince of Wales, my first coaching experience. I wasn't a teacher back then. I was just a volunteer, and my friends were teachers there. And yeah, it was super fun. And then I remember playing against Saints in the quarterfinal of the city championship, and losing by 100 points. We were like, give these private school kids, let's show them what we made of. And then yeah, the kids were scared shitless. They knew going in they were going to lose by 100. And even though like Mike and Bill put on a strong team and then pulled out the guys for the second half, we still lost by 100. Like, I was like, oh my god. And then since then, I was like, okay, this is the place where I'd like to go and coach, and then that's how I kind of was able to zero in on that school. And okay, this is the if you want to coach rugby, this is the place to be, right? And I went to UBC, got my teaching degree, and then got hired. And I was still in university, and I got hired by Saints. So that was cool.
Yeah. Through all your teams you played on and like coached, I think you talked about culture. How important is culture on like a rugby team?
Culture, it's a big word. It's probably I think it's culture. It goes hand in hand. So with identity, I think identity is the most important thing. And culture is just maybe a byproduct of your identity, right? But we talked about like DNA and like when you say like a French team, they play like the French, and the English, they play the English, and South African, there's that rugby DNA. So yeah, it's ultra important. It's probably the first thing you need to talk about as well when you start coaching a team. That's the first thing I talk about, like who we are, who do we want to be, how do we want other teams to see us, like what our values. This is probably the first thing you do, like what are your values, what are common values, what are beliefs, what are performance standards, and then that dictate your culture. And then the culture, I think, comes from the player, and then the coach is kind of like a guardian of that culture. Make sure we keep the direction for sure.
Yeah, and on the topic of culture, was there a big shift coming from France to Canada?
Yeah, I think huge. In especially, I'm from the south of France. It's a different culture, rugby culture, than the southwest or the south or the north. In the southeast, where I'm from, like culture was like rugby was very rural, like, and it wasn't like kind of like that private school game that you see in England, for example. So it was really rough, like really tough and rough, and then really a lot of fighting. It was part of it. Like the fighting was part of rugby, and moving here, yeah, I took a few red cards my first season. I remember I was like, okay, so I had to adapt to the playing style, and also like the support. Like there's so much more money in France in rugby. It's probably the wealthiest rugby country because of how much money is I think is in the TV rights, and so it trickles down all the way. Like there's a lot of yeah, it was a lot of support. Like when I was playing either for my hometown in juniors or for that club in semi-pro there, yeah, it was a lot of support. Like I remember I showed up in the change room and my shorts and jersey and socks were folded and on the bench and ready to go.
Wow.
And if I needed a new pair of socks, I'd just ask, or if I needed a massage, I'd just go see the physio, and like it was kind of sweet. Here, you have to pay for your shorts, pay for your socks, you pay for your insurance. Yeah, you need to drive yourself to the game, which is insane. Like in France, you take a team bus, and it's sweet. Here, you have to pay $20 to go on the bus, and you take a school bus. It's all different. So it's very amateur, but the level of play is still pretty really good, I would say. But the infrastructure and the inner runnings, I guess, of the clubs is very different. Yeah.
I would love to hear more about kind of your transition from like player to coach.
I feel like I received a lot from rugby. Like it gave me a lot. Like I said, like I was able to, when I moved here, I didn't know anyone, and the club helped me so much, not financially, but like just I never. That's the thing. I don't think I ever got $1 from the rowing club, but like it gave me like friends and family almost. So I felt like I wanted to give back, and I felt like I enjoyed the transmission aspect of coaching and helping, and so I became more of a student of the game in my later years, in my mid-20s, I'd say. Like I became like studying the game and understanding more the game, and then I did like a level 1 coaching certificate, and then just coach the kids at the club, like the really young kids. And then teacher asked me to come and coach at Prince of Wales, and I just enjoyed it. I started with grade 10s, I remember, and I just really enjoyed it. Really loved it, and I just kept learning, and it was a new thing for me to learn. And I think my job at the time was kind of like pretty chill, pretty easy. I was cruising through it, and like it wasn't really challenging. So I found that aspect of my life a challenge. So I started to really learn and challenge myself with the coaching, and it was super fun. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you yourself were very grateful for kind of the coaches that helped you. Was there any specific coach or mentor that like stood out among them all?
Yeah, like I think every coach that I've had gives you something different. My first coach was an absolute legend. Like his son ended up being the captain for France for the French national team. He still plays. He's the captain for Stade Francais right now. And this guy was just an old school, larger than life dude. And yeah, it was just a big guy. And yeah, we still when I go back home to France and meet up with my old junior team buddies, who none of them have played much rugby after, but we still talk about what that guy said. You know, like we still have like his catchphrase down and all that stuff. And he had a huge influence on me. And yeah, so he was influential. And then my coach at the rowing club, I had a coach, Jeremy Sable. He influenced me as well. He was very supportive in my development as a coach as well, and he had his own very old school kind of managerial style. Influenced me in a way for sure. Yeah, I think his dedication and his passion, wouldn't say his coaching style influenced me. Like probably I'm probably the opposite of his coaching style, but his dedication, his passion was always like an inspiration for me. I'd say like Mike Styles at the rank at Saints as well has been a great mentor, support, and I can always like bounce ideas of him or vent or whatever it is. He always has very very good advice. He's very even kill guy, and it's very supportive to have him for sure. And Chamberlain, Mr. Chamberlain as well. He challenges me in different way. Always has like a more like technical side of the game that's challenging. Or yeah, it's been great to have those two to work with for sure.
That's awesome. Was there your favorite? Well, who was your favorite player when you were growing up?
My favorite growing up, I always liked Marc Lièvremont. He was the French coach in 2011. He was this tiny number 7, and he was so feisty, and yeah, he was just so tough. Like he played bigger than he was. I love that about him. I always like Shabal as well. When I moved here, was the height of this guy. He had like, I don't know if you know, this guy had this huge beard, long hair. They called him the caveman, and he just cut people in half as well. And he was like, yeah, he put French rugby back on the map for a while as well. He was like one of the world stars. I like that guy because he was just like sheer toughness, like just a monster of a guy. I was a huge fan of Johnny Wilkinson. I know it's so funny, like this English guy had a tough career. He was like this world star, and then he had a string of injuries, and he was in the gutter, and Toulon gave him a chance, and he just total rebirth there. And yeah, he's a huge inspiration as well. Very inspirational story, that guy.
I'm sure. Like, coming back kind of from a coach's perspective, but also kind of tying into those stuff that you talked about, like playing larger in life. Are there some traits like what would you be like 3 or like 4 ideal traits you look for in a player?
Um, for me, the first thing is commitment. If you're not committed, then there's no point being there. If you don't have a goal and committed to that goal, yeah, you want to be committed. You want to be goal oriented as well. You want to make sure you have a goal and you work towards that goal. And every day, whatever you do, which is your skill development, your nutrition, your understanding of the game, you move towards that goal. I like players who are curious as well. I think if you're curious and you ask question, that means that you want to learn. So you have that kind of growth mindset, something that we look for. Somebody that can take feedback, and sometimes critical feedback, and sometimes brutally honest feedback.
Also on kind of the coaching side, who's and I won't take it personally if it's not a team I've been on, but who's your favorite team to coach, or who has been your favorite team to coach?
My favorite team that I ever coached,
Hmm.
I was involved with the BC U16 one year, and I did like 5 or 6 years with the BC U16. And this one year we had a group which was absolutely amazing. And it was just so fun because they were so keen, and it just everything we threw at them, they just picked it up right away. We literally needed like one session to teach them like something, and we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and challenged them, and yeah, they were amazing. um, I've also really enjoyed coaching the grade 10 team, which is in grade 12 now, the team which we won provincial, where you were part of. That was probably the most transformational experience for me as a coach, because I was writing a thesis at the time, and I was using some of the findings that I was experimenting with the leadership coaching that I was doing with some of the boys, and that changed me. Yeah, that changed me deeply. I'd say it changed my practices as a coach. It changed my philosophy as a coach, and changed a lot of my perspectives on how to coach student athletes as well.
What would you say was your biggest rugby achievement? Is it as a coach or is it as a player?
Yeah, I think when you have parents that come and see you and say, "Oh, you really helped my son change and become like a better person," I think that's the achievement. I think it's not the trophies and stuff like that, because they're pretty meaningless. It's freaking, we're talking about school rugby in Canada, in like it's such a small pond, like, so it doesn't, that's not something you I think of an achievement. But I would say, yeah, like whenever it has been the case that parents said that their son's experience in the rugby team has helped them become better people, I think that's the achievement. I think, yeah, that's how you measure your success. I think at the school, Mr. Stiles say like we measure success on how many kids go on to play rugby after high school. So that's another criteria for us to measure our achievements for sure.
And on that topic of kind of continuing rugby after Saints and after high school, I was wondering if you give some advice to kind of some of the players that would be in like their junior, senior seasons, like I am, who are looking to play kind of in that next level. What maybe some advice or tips you could give them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, there are two kinds of players. There are players who want to be involved in the performance environment and they want to play the highest level. And there are players who want to be part of an experience, who end up being club guys. And I think I was more of an experienced kind of guy as well. I never wanted to play for BC or Canada. That was never really one of my objectives, but I wanted to be part of a rugby club. And I think a lot of students think that they have to be part of a performance environment, and it might be too challenging for them. But it's not like that. Like a lot of players that I coach at the rowing club, they come once a week to practice and they play on the weekend, and sometimes they play every other weekend because they have a family, they have a job. So I'd like to say, if you're in for performance, yeah, just try to play the best level you can and go to the gym 3 times a week, and like do the nutrition stuff and the working out and all that stuff, and yeah, go play for university and find a club when you get back and just play as hard as you can. And if you're not in for that, rugby is an amazing community, like such a fun group of guys. I spend every weekend with my rugby friends, every holidays with my rugby friends. I've met friends from all over the world. I've visited my friends from all over the world. I went to New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, visited my friends. So yeah, it's, get involved. It's such a amazing community. Like you get a lot out of being part of a rugby club for sure. And you don't have to be a, like an amazing player. You just have to be committed. Like I said, like you don't need talent. You just need to be involved. Rugby scene in Vancouver as well. There's a really fun club scene. Whichever club you want to be involved in, it's a great environment for sure. And I hope, I know it's tough when you're in uni, like you have a lot going on, like your grades and the pressure and all that. But sports is a great straight reliever, right? So I think
Mhm.
you don't have to be a varsity player. You can just be like a social player and have a ton of fun. Rugby is a game, right? So it's supposed to be fun.
Wondering if I get some of your advice, and I'm sure a lot of people who will be tuning into this interview are wondering how can they kind of stay motivated during these times, COVID, where we don't get that kind of fun that you kind of talked about, whether it's through the game or through the social aspect, which is obviously a big part of rugby.
Yeah, I'm depressed too, man. I'm like I'm feeling it so hard. Like I haven't seen any of my rugby friends and I miss the competition, the adrenaline of
Mm.
competition. It's been a huge bummer. My wife was calling me out on it the other day. Like she's like, "You're miserable. Like you don't have your rugby and you're miserable." I was like, "Yes, I am." I know it's hard to motivate. I think right now, like we're lucky. The Six Nation is on right now, for example.
Mm.
So that's just we have those guys to kind of look up to, like the Super Rugby is on. So there's rugby to be watched, and I think that keeps me a bit engaged. Yeah, and just keep on learning about the game. Like what new. I was just reading a book today on some of the fun games and drills we can do, and just keep on learning. Don't stagnate, I guess. And
Mhm.
if you're a player, like get the fittest possible and the strongest possible, and because rugby is a lot easier when you're fitter. That's something that's for sure. It's a lot easier when you're fitter and faster. So that's something you can work on. Like I said earlier, if you're goal oriented, then you can still feel accomplished if you knock down some of your goals. So if you have some fitness goals or like strength goals that you can achieve in those times, then you'll when rugby restarts, you'll be ahead of most other players who have done nothing for sure.
I think I'm kind of gonna like use this time to learn about rugby and kind of like advance
Yeah,
yourself personally.
for sure. Like, so right now on YouTube, you have all these YouTube channels which analyze every game, and they break it down, and it's amazing. Like we didn't have any of that stuff when I was trying to learn the game. Like remember like rewinding the VHS and like, oh, what's the move that the French team did against Wales? Like rewinding the VHS and trying to look at it. Now you have no excuses. Like if you want to learn, there's so many great softwares and great avenues for you to learn, and it's pretty with minimal effort on your part, right? So yeah, become a student of the game, learn about tactics. And if you can't really work on the technique because you need to have more of a training kind of environment, like with other players and whatnot. Do what you can for your individual techniques. I think there's hundreds of drills that you can do at home by yourself or with like your parents or with your brothers or whatever. There's
Mhm.
so many of those. And yeah, so many things you can do to learn about the tactics or the strategy part of the game for sure, which is huge.
So thank you so
Yeah.
much for this.
My
It's been awesome
pleasure.
and very informative.